Hi, it's Ethan MUSOLINI, the Merchant of Success. Welcome to this particular program, which I'm excited about. It is Effective Time Management Strategies 2.0. And, I like how one of my teachers put it. I believe it must have been Brian Tracy, who said that time management is life management. When you think about it, your life is different units of time and how you live those different units of time. So when we talk about time management, we are really talking about life management. So let that thought stick in your mind as we move along. And once again, I go through 5 core pillars. We look at the clarity, meaning what is it and why is it important? We look at the mindset. We look at the strategies required. We look at the skill sets and then the mastery, finally. When it comes to clarity on time management, let's look at that. When we talk about time management in practical terms, we refer to time planning and allocation to different activities that have to be performed. That's the practical definition. The earlier part of time management as life management, that is a strategic definition, if I may put it that way. And time can never be extended, and possibly the reason as to why most managers or leaders claim they do not have enough time. And I would say it's even beyond managers and leaders. It is most people, they say, I just don't have enough time, or I wish I had more time. How many of us wish that we had more than 40 hours? How many of us wish we had more than 24 hours a day? Type the word more. If you wish there were more hours in a day than we currently have, please type in the chat box and I see. Just to check that out. I like that. So why time management? You see, time management is a virtue for successful professionals because part of professionalism is how you manage your time. And this series, one of the targets is definitely professionals. So this is one of the ways in which you can demonstrate that you're professional or not. It also earns you respect and attracts serious people towards you. I mean, I cannot stand people who don't know how to keep time. In fact, there is a gentleman, Godfrey, whom we at Success Africa, we use often for transport services. He said that he had a client who would always tell him, okay, come pick me. And then he would spend there sometimes 30 minutes, even an hour, sometimes even more, just waiting for the fellow to come out. He said, I finally stopped. I said, no. He called me, I said, no. Okay. And that's, so meaning, even if you're paying someone money, no one wants people who do not know how to keep time. I mean, by the time a service provider says, you're not keeping time, I'm out of here. And I remember also chatting with another Uber fellow. That's what he told me. So yeah, just beware that if you're a serious time manager, it also attracts people. I know typically, like, at least I can guarantee you that on average, all my mastermind members who are typically senior executives, they keep time. And if they are not going to, they send a message. So that's how disciplined they are. That's how successful people behave. Time is inelastic and it is scarce. That's what it is. It's 24 hours, that's it. You cannot extend it. I wish there was a way for me to extend it, to be honest. But no, it is inelastic. Therefore, you have to find a way to manage what is available. True leaders are timekeepers. It is as simple as that. So I do not see an excuse for a leader not to be a timekeeper, period. And you want to demonstrate yourself to be in that league. Once you demonstrate yourself to be in that league, it sets you apart. And you want to be apart. You want to be exceptional in terms of how you do things. So this is what some of the stats are telling us, research. Some of us, I know, we love to know what the research is telling us. So these are some of the numbers that I would like to bring to your attention. 89% of employees waste at least a part of their working time each day. 31% of workers waste 30 minutes a day, another 31% 1 hour a day, and 16% waste roughly 2 hours. That is according to salary.com. 64% of workers surf the web for entertainment and personal stuff while at work. That's definitely true. That's according to Entrepreneur. And 50% of employees get distracted on texting and phone calls during a workday. 27% on snack and smoke breaks, and 23% get distracted on talking to colleagues, while talking to colleagues. So that's another figure for you to be aware of. And when I'm mentioning these things, it's you to pay attention and say, do I serve personal and entertainment stuff during working hours? And when I say personal and entertainment stuff, if you do it during your lunch break, for example, that's a different matter. Here I'm talking about working hours. And to also ask yourself, how do I manage my phone? When I'm taking snacks or smoke breaks, how much time do I spend? Or do I get distracted while talking to colleagues? Okay, so these numbers, look at them as a primer, as a reminder to say, okay, how am I measuring up on these factors where some people lose time? And an employee may spend as much as 30 hours per week just checking on new emails. That's according to Inc. magazine. So that's something for you to be aware of also, how much time you spend on email. Now, I'm also aware that some of us, our work is predominantly email. For example, you could be in a customer service role and you're handling the support email. So you might find that's your productive work, dealing with email. Here, I'm referring to other stuff in general, how they respond or how much time they could be spending on email. All right, let's look at the mindsets required when it comes to time management. There are 6 mindsets that we need to pay attention to. The first mindset is in the integrity mindset. When you agree to a time, it is a contract signed between you, the activity, and those involved. So it's like a 3-part agreement. Therefore, you need to hold your side of the bargain. If this is it, if this is the triangle. So one is the other party, the other one is the activity itself, and then you. So you have to hold your side of the bargain. So you need to, you see, I love that word integrity, because usually when people talk about integrity, they think just about, say, being honest, not stealing and all that. No, part of integrity, an even bigger challenge in my view, is keeping your word. You promise to be somewhere at 4. Are you there at 4? And if you're not, then you renegotiate ahead of time. Because I always like adding that caveat. I mean, there are always those extraordinary situations where you may not, and then you step up. So please, let's remember that part. To be a time management pro, you have to keep your word. The second mindset is the priority mindset. In other words, is it a priority? Because you need to clean out non-priorities. Now, you need to eliminate distractors, things that distract you. You need to major in minors. I mean, major in majors, I beg your pardon, and focus on the goal. What is your 80-20 rule? Now, I need to highlight some of these things because some of these are big concepts that would require an hour by itself. Each of these concepts, they are really big. Now, when we talk about non-priorities, one of the biggest mindsets I picked up one day, I believe it could be like 3 years ago, in that when you say yes to something, it means you're saying no to something else. So right now, by me being here, it means I'm saying no to all the other things I could have otherwise done during this particular segment. So that's why I value your time, whether you're attending this live or watching the recording. Meaning, you need to know what your priorities are, and if it's not a priority, you clean it out. Because the moment you put a non-priority on your table, then you're saying no to a priority in your life. When we talk about eliminate distractors, you need to notice those, whatever they are, and this is the second time I'm talking about this, and then eliminate them as much as possible, whether it is social media notifications or putting your phone, like my phone typically is on silence 99.9% of the time, because I want to attend to my phone when I need to attend to it, not when people just need to attend to me. Because then it means, for example, if my phone is on, like now in this session, then I cannot communicate. Now, having said that, I know some of us cannot afford to do that given your role. So please, everything I say, some things may work in your personal life and some things may not. So pick what works and leave what doesn't. All I'm saying is, as much as possible, give what I'm sharing with you a chance and then decide what would work or what wouldn't. Major and majors. What I mean by major and majors, you see, something I hinted on some time back is just because you're busy does not mean that you're doing the core business. You could spend 8 hours doing things that give you very little return on time, energy, and resources. Time, energy, and money. Yeah, when I say resources, I mean money. So in other words, what I would like, one of the biggest concepts I can share with you right now is you need to ask yourself, of the activities I'm going to do or intend to do, what would give me the biggest return on my time, energy, and money? Then focus on those things. Focus on those things. Now, one of the quickest ways is to use what we call the Pareto principle. That's what you're seeing, the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule, I know some of us are very familiar with it. Some of us may not be. So this was generated by an Italian economist. And he discovered that, typically in terms of activities, not activities, but in terms of all different cycles of life, you find that typically 80% of things lead to 20% of results, and 20% of things lead to 80% of the results. This is what I mean. And when you look at it across the board, you'll find that, for example, if you have a clientele of 100, if you have 100 clients as an example, then you will notice that 80% of your revenue is usually generated by 20% of your clients. Now, if you have 10 friends who make you happy, you will discover that 20% of your friends, or two, assuming they are 10, you will discover that 2 of those are responsible they generate 80% of your happiness, and the other 8 may generate 20% of your happiness. Now, this is, by the way, a general guide. It's not precisely 20%. Sometimes it is 10-90. Sometimes it is 5-95. But the average is about 20-80. And therefore, one of the best gifts you can give yourself is, what are those 20% of activities that give you 80% of the results or returns? Meaning, if you have 10 things to do by the end of the day, of those 10 things, you discover that if you did 1 or 2 things, you would have had an 80% success of the day, or even 90%. That's how it works. And you have to be careful not to be seduced by the other 8 things, which will keep you seemingly busy, and yet they are not as valuable in terms of return. Okay. So I'm spending a bit of time here because I know it's a very valuable piece that I've just shared with you. And The other mindset, which is important, is the mindset of working through people. Delegate as much as possible. Ask for help. Say what you can do and what you can't do, and focus on a few areas and ask for help as much as possible. So there, I have colleagues who are helping me with some of these things. There are things that I'm not good at, and I cannot do everything myself. So I have to be aware of that. Now, the biggest culprits when it comes to this mindset are the perfectionists.
Easy one.
And there is, of course, there is value in perfectionism also. And the other extreme end is also not useful. And one of the things I see holding people back is say, me, I talk to him, and sometimes I see people and they can't do things the way I want them to do them, and they slow me down, so I just jump in and do it myself. Yes, but for how long? You can't do everything. And then what happens if you have a headache? Then nothing can move forward. So what you need to think about is, if people are not capable, then you need to spend more time coaching and mentoring them. Then they can help you with these packages or with these areas where you need help. Because if you can get more people to help you, then you're buying yourself much more time. The other way to look at it is just think about someone who has delegated to, say, 10 people some work. Now, assuming those people are able to put in, even if it is 3 hours, that's a total of 30 hours. Now, there's no human being who can work for 30 hours because they are not available in a day. So that's the beauty of delegation. And it's okay to ask for help and also to communicate what you can do or not do. The other thing, of course, it comes to integrity. Please do not promise that you're going to do something when you know that you're not going to. And when we talk about focusing on a few areas, look for areas where you choose to be an expert. You cannot be an expert in everything. Choose a few areas you can focus on, and then you'll be more productive that way. Okay. The other mindset is the single focus mindset. Your mind works better if you focus on one item, one activity, one task at a time, and drive it till the end. Lock out distractors. So right now, I'm focused talking to you right now. Just imagine if I said, okay, guys, just give me a moment. There's one phone call I need to make. And, I need to capture something in my journal. Just a moment. And, and then I talk and then, hey, you would run away, of course, for us who are attending live, even if you're watching the recording. And number two, I cannot be as proficient. So you need to focus on one idea. Even in marketing, we are advised that you focus people on taking one action. Okay. Enter your name or click this link, whatever it is. But if you give a person so many options, then they get confused. In the same way, you can confuse yourself by you focusing on so many tasks. Now, I know there is this seduction around the idea of multitasking. All we can say for a fact, according to research, is multitasking definitely slows down your levels of productivity. Now, there are people who are more skilled and gifted in that area than others, but we know that you're much better off when you focus on one item, one idea, finish it, drive it to the very end, and then jump on to the next one. And talking about time, looking back, one of the challenges I've had to struggle with, and I haven't fully overcome it, for full transparency, is sometimes, because I'm very creative, I'm always thinking of so many ideas here and there, though now I'm finding solutions around that, is then I find myself, before I finish this thing, then I want to jump into another thing. So that has slowed me down over the years. Now that I'm getting wiser, I'm learning to be more selective. I'm not 100% there. All I can say is, one of the best gifts you can give yourself is, before you jump to another project, to another idea, first complete this thing. You can imagine, you just think about a farmer, digs a hole, and before he plants there the seeds, like, let me let me dig another hole, or let me dig another hole. And then before you know it, if he's all over the place digging without planting the seed and covering the soil, then before you know it, the rainy season might come and pass when the person is just poking around different parts of the field. And that's what happens sometimes. You keep poking around, and before you know it, you are 40 like Ethan. I'm 43 years of this recording, like, I could have filled that hole. I could have filled that hole. I could have filled that hole. And I don't want us to be the victims in the same space. And I'm saying, let's be focused on 1 to 3 marks in terms of things. But when you're executing something, focus on one thing, get done with it, then jump onto another. The other one is the early bird mindset. Develop a habit of acting ahead of time. My wife was alerting me to something that I could do differently. I was telling me, look, for these events, Ethan, you could communicate or promote these events much earlier. And I agree. I totally agree with her, and I totally agreed with her indeed, to say, look, we could market these events way ahead of time, and moving forward, I'll do much better. And because when you do that ahead of time, when you do things ahead of time, then the results are much better in return. So that's something I would encourage you to think about. So, okay, how can I do these things ahead of time? My wife was sharing with me the project they were working on, and their supervisor said, okay, the deadline, I believe the deadline was like 23rd. And their supervisor said, you know what, our target is to deliver by 19th, something like that, like a couple of days earlier. I'm like, yeah, that's a fantastic mindset. So when you have that mindset, you have less pressure, you make less mistakes, and you're much more productive. I like this. This is one of my favorite mindset, that time is made. And I really mean that. Depending on the value attached to something, there is always time for it. Attach value to activities and you have time for them. I value this, what I'm doing right now, and guess what? The time has appeared. The time appeared. Yet I've had moments where I could not imagine that I could have, this time consistently for all these days I'm working on this project. But why? But because it's important, it's valuable, the time is created. So I find it funny when some people call me and say, I'm just wondering, when do you have free time to meet? I'm like, no, it's not like I have free time. I can only create it. Because for me, I always have stuff that I'm doing. Either I have stuff that I'm doing or creating or learning, or I always have, it's not like I have time there available free. No, I can only create time. And I'm sure most of us understand what I'm talking about. So time is always available. Time is made. If it's something very important, you will find the time. Okay. But Frey is asking, could early bird mindset also mean raising start work early as a way of getting ahead of time? Absolutely. Well put. Yes, that's part of it. Starting work early. I notice that when I start my day early, as an example, then I get ahead much quicker. There are people who start their day. I know one of the most productive lawyers I know that I want to make, if I mentioned the name, you would know. For him, he gets to office by what, 5:30 a.m. or something like that. Now that I don't see myself, doing such stuff, definitely, but he's super successful. You can't argue with that. So I'm not saying that you have to be at office by 5:30 a.m. All I'm saying is think about how you could start your days early. All right, let's go to strategies. Here are 5 sure strategies that will improve your time management. Not just timekeeping, but management, or how you manage your time. The first strategy is eating an elephant in stages. Break down a large or seemingly it should have been a seemingly large task into smaller achievable tasks. Set yourself deadlines for the smaller tasks so that you can be able to meet the deadlines for the overall task. One of the best pieces of advice I received or got or had was that, look, if you're building and you just think about building if you think about the whole project, you'll be overwhelmed and you'll not start. Say no, just take it step by step. Say no, okay, there are different stages. All right, let's get the plan. All right, good. All right, now let's do the foundation. Get it done. So you take it step by step. Then once you get it done, now you're seeing progress. You keep getting inspired to continue moving higher and higher. Therefore, whichever task it is, think about the different pieces. So for me in this presentation, I have 5 different pieces. I have the clarity, the mindset, the strategies, the skill sets, and the mastery. Those are the 5 pieces I have. So what are your 5 pieces in quotes for whichever project that you have? Once you look at it that way in pieces, then it's much easier. Then even mentally, it is much easier for me to process knowing that, I have stopovers, so to speak, compared to thinking, oh, I have to speak for this amount of time nonstop. No, I have pieces. That is psychologically liberating compared to thinking about a whole elephant, a whole chunk. Eating the whole chunk is typically much more challenging. Godfrey says, eat the elephant process by process. Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you, Godfrey. Yes, process by process, that elephant indeed. Okay, so whatever job you have, take it process by process, as Godfrey has reminded us. The other tool that I learned about a couple of years ago from Eben Pagan, one of my teachers, and this is based on research. It's not something I'm creating from my head. It's based on research. I believe he also got that idea from the Powerful Engagement guys, Tony Schwartz. It's a book I would highly recommend, The Powerful Engagement. I believe this is the second time I'm recommending it. So what's recommended is that you work for 1 hour, get a break, or maximum 90 minutes, get a break. But even better is you could work for 50 minutes straight nonstop and then take a 10 minutes break and work for another 50. Can see there's something I didn't. So you take a 10 minutes break, not 20. Beg your pardon. Yeah. Sorry about that. So you work for 50 minutes straight, then rest for 10 minutes, work for another 50 minutes, and then rest for 30 minutes, or change the task. Now, why this is important is because apparently after 60 to 90 minutes, there are people who have very high levels of concentration. And I find my wife to have very even higher levels of concentration than I am. So there are those who can stay longer, and that's fine. But ideally, do not go beyond 1.5 hours. Take a break. Now, what's recommended is change the position, take a walk downstairs or run, or you can even go on your phone and check. For me, the break, I usually use it to check on the latest Arsenal news. All right. So what that does is it's like the body is put into a reset mode. So by the time you get back to your desk or to work, then you're fresher, you're more focused, and you can write things at a much faster pace, and hence you're much more productive. So this is one of the biggest productivity tools I can give you when it comes to time management. When I learned it, it made so much sense. Getting those breaks. And what I find useful again is because you're typically using your brain. If your work involves a lot of brain work, like I do, then it's better to use the other 10 minutes for something physical. Go to the kitchen, get water, or take a quick walk around the house. Do some stretches. Get that into your system. Then strategy number 3 is the planning strategy. You need to determine the steps that you have to take from where you are today to a successfully completed project. So you need to think through meticulously to be able to make it, because if you don't, then you're losing out. So you need to think and say, okay, what do I need to do? And then you plan things, you do blocks accordingly, and then you know that, okay, these are the different steps for me to go from here to there. So there's that clarity. And then we have what we call the wait productively. That's another strategy. And to use the small slots of time to do some work you do not like. Okay. And what you can do is, meaning if you're not very engaged, then you can set a timer and say, you know what, okay, since I'm not fully engaged, let me use these 10 minutes to clean the table. Or let me do this other thing to keep going. So meaning you just, when you don't have so much, and there are these things you've been putting off that you do not like, now you can choose and say, no, let me just give it 5 to 10 minutes. And then once you get in, you might get into rhythm. Then once you get into rhythm, then just keep going. And then before you know it, these things you didn't like, boom, you've finished the project or whatever it is. So if you are thinking you wanted to clean your reading room and just clean the desk, before you know it, then you want to clean the floor and all that. That's what we mean. That's one level. As you wait for something else, then you do something that you do not like. Number two, the other useful piece that I found that I use, I beg your pardon, is there are those moments whereby you're waiting for a meeting, or some people come late. So typically I always carry a book in my bag, in my laptop bag. That's one, when we're moving a lot. And number two, you can use that time to respond to emails since you have a phone. So meaning the question you can ask yourself as you're waiting is, what is the productive thing I can do right now? It could mean a business phone call. It could mean responding to emails. It could mean learning. Learning is usually my favorite when I'm waiting for someone and they have not appeared on time. The fifth strategy is the law of three. So what you do is you ask yourself this basic question. If I could only do 3 things in a given time frame, what would they be? If I could do only 3 things today and it's a super successful day, what would those 3 things be? Now, do you notice how that's a different strategic way of thinking? And then that will force you to think about things that are useful and powerful. That would mean, for example, you can, if there are 3 things, you can budget them to say, okay, between 9 and you could say, let's say between 8:30 and 10:30, I'm going to work on this thing. That's 2 hours. And then you say, okay, then you rest for 30 minutes. And then say between 11 and 1, I'm going to work on this other task. And then in the afternoon, then you have your lunch break, 1 to 2. And then from 2 to 4, say I'm going to work on this other task. I will tell you also, if you can focus 2 hours and you give them the 50-50, the 50-10, 50-30 rule, then you'll be amazed at how much you can accomplish. And I would propose you focus on 1 task. By the way, think about it. If you just focused on 3 tasks a day, productive tasks, and you're working 5 days a week, just think about if you did 15 tasks a week that are productive. In a month, those are 60 tasks, but productive tasks. That would be a successful month. I can guarantee you. If you just use that thought process alone. So to make a difference in your life or in any other area, you don't need so many things. You just need a few things that are crucial. There's a book I read many years ago. Not many years ago, a few years ago, possibly like 3 or 4. It's called The One Thing. I would encourage you to look up that book. It's called The One Thing. And in that, they recommend that you just pick one thing and you focus on that. And then you don't do, if you can focus on just one thing, Yeah, so I highly recommend that you get this book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. Let me see. Yeah, The One Thing. That's the title of the book, The One Thing. And those are the authors, Gary Keller with J. Papasan. So I highly, highly recommend you get this book. I can't recommend it enough. The One Thing. The One Thing. All right, now let's look at the skill sets. Here are 6 steps to timekeeping mastery that would be very, very useful for you to consider. Number 1 is cost your time. How much are you worth per hour? This I've learned from my coach and mentor. He says, look, Ethan, you need to value your time more. And when he says how much are you worth per hour, his thought process is not what you charge per hour, but every hour you are awake, then you should be able to generate that. If you're not, then, so this is, let me tell you the exercise we go through. So he will ask me, all right, Ethan, so how much time did you work this week? And how much money did you earn this week? So then he will get the amount of money, divide by the number of hours. He says, you know what, see, your hour is this much, this is too little. That's a different mindset, my friend. So if we can start to say, okay, if my hour is worth this, is that what I generated during the hours of the day? I haven't hit. I'm in the process of hitting that goal, not yet there yet. So that's a powerful way to think. Therefore, you need to cost your time. How much are you worth per hour? So meaning, if you're working 8 hours a day, did you achieve or generate what you feel and believe you're worth per hour? That's a powerful, powerful concept. Step 2, then, once you identify how much your time is worth, then you ask yourself, you identify your time stealers and devise means to get rid of them. Because if you're not getting the worth, then there are some time stealers that you need to get rid of. But what are they? You need to know what they are. Because most likely there is a big possibility that you're not getting the value of what your hour is worth. So what is stealing your time? Identify the time stealers and then devise strategies on how to get rid of those time stealers. Then step 3 is you set goals for different periods of your life or different packages of your life. So I was telling you last time how I believe I still have it in my notebook here. So there are really different aspects. I decided that for the benefit of some of us who are not there, where I decided, okay, there are different blocks. So I have spirituality, health, family, wealth, impact, like the kind of work I'm doing right now, and then Success Africa. So those are the different areas or aspects where I need to set goals in, or where I'm setting goals in. So you need to know which areas are those that are valuable to you. Not what other people think you ought to do, but what you feel you ought to do. Now, some of us, of course, are employed, and therefore a chunk of your time you may not have control. But then what happens to the other chunks where you have control? By the way, talking about the other chunks where you have control, here is another tip for you. We are told that typically we should sleep for 8 hours, then work for 8 hours. Now, the magic is how you spend the other 8 hours. Now, of course, it does not work as a straightforward formula like that. You might find that of the other presumably 8 hours that you have, you might find that technically you have 2 to 4 hours. Now, how are you spending those 2 to 4 hours that you have in a day that are available to you? Let's just assume the other 8 hours you don't have control, or let's say 10 hours. That's why I'm saying 2 to 4 hours. How will you use those extra 2 to 4 hours in a day or even 1 to 4 hours a day is what will separates average people from successful people. For example, I honor you and I appreciate you and I highly, highly value and respect you that as of this recording, it's a Sunday afternoon and you're here. You're spending your time in a valuable way to make yourself a better human being. Now, others right now, and it's not to judge them, I'm saying there could be, some of them are engaged in activities that are productive, of course. I'm not saying this is the only productive thing. And I'm sure there are others who spend time unproductively. And I'm sure all of us have had Sunday afternoons where we've not spent, and when I say all of, I mean including myself, where we've not spent the afternoon in a productive manner. So how you spend those 2 to 4 hours a day extra, or 1 to 4, let's just say 1 to 4, because sometimes you might find you have like 1 hour, especially if you find like you're a professional or working mother, you find, by the way, just know if you're a working mother, I have a huge, tremendous, I mean, indescribable respect for you, because I know it's tough raising a family. It's even tougher when you have to mix it with work. So next, prioritize and plan your work and your tasks. Your work tasks, okay? That's something I was supposed to, just give me a moment. So you need to prioritize your work tasks. So what are your work tasks? Then prioritize them accordingly. I beg your pardon. Yeah, that's the word. Prioritize them accordingly, because that's where the magic is. Can you prioritize your tasks accordingly? Because not all tasks, there's that book which I've never read, or Animal Farm, that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. I've never read that book. And in the same way, all tasks are created equal, but some are more equal than others, period. Therefore, you need to prioritize them. So prioritize your tasks accordingly. And then finally, set deadlines and stick to them. Now, this requires discipline. It is a muscle you build. You and I have to build muscles to say, okay, this has to be done by this date, and you stick to that. That's part of integrity. It's a muscle you build. It's something you have to consciously work on. It's something that you and I have to work on day in, day out. And it's a never-ending challenge, to be honest with you. So let's stick to the deadlines. So if you do these things, then you'll find that your awareness and ways of dealing and managing time is much better than over 90% of people out there. I can guarantee you. If you can engage the strategies I gave you and these skill sets and these specifics or tactics, then you'll be amazed at what's possible for you. Then, of course, self-discipline. You need to practice self-discipline. Which is, and apart from sticking tasks, when I say self-discipline, it's things like, you know what, I am going to make sure that I'm at my desk by 8 a.m. I'm working. Or I'm going to make sure that I do not sleep before clarifying what my day is going to look like tomorrow. That's self-discipline. So you could call it building a habit or building healthy habits. So this is my habit. And when I talk about, like, one of the things I was sharing with the Succeeding Daily Mastermind members on last Wednesday, I believe, was talking about you have to be aware, for example, when you're starting your day, if you're starting your day on social media, looking at news, reading emails, then you're just responding to other people's agendas. You're now reactive, you're in a reactive mode. So one of the strategies I would like to give you is you start your day the way you want it started. And one of the best things I can share with you is work on yourself, make yourself better mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, then you will have a better day for you. So I know I'm going more into the productivity side, but it's very important. And that's self-discipline also, to say, okay, I do not check on social media until, say, 10 p.m. I mean 10 a.m. or 11 or lunchtime or something like that. Or, okay, or before I open email, I have to first work on the tasks, these projects that I set myself to do. And again, the email part, like I mentioned, some of us, our jobs require us to be in touch with email 24/7. That's a different context. But I'm sure the majority of us can start our day or the first 2 hours of the day with something productive rather than just being reactive. So focus on being productive, not reactive. And one of the best ways is to work on yourself, and then you work on the tasks that you feel are super valuable. All right. Okay, so one of the questions that has popped up is, okay, how are these things different from the mindsets? And the example given was around prioritizing. Now, when we talk about mindsets, how you should think. When you talk about skill sets, what you should do. Okay. For example, when I say the mindset to think, to prioritize, you think, okay, what is the priority here? You're thinking, okay, the priority here today is to make sales. That's the thought process. That's the mindset. Now, when I talk about the skill set, now that is at execution level, whereby now you pick up your journal, not journal, but assuming this is your diary, where now you actually write down the sales calls you will be making and at what time. So meaning you're actually thinking about the actual execution. So the other one is thought process. This is now executing level when we talk about skill set. So please let me know if that makes sense by typing in the chat. All right. Now let's look at mastery. And one of the participants had actually asked this question some time back, and I promised to tackle it during this segment. So this is what you're going to do. Prioritize your next week's work using this model. A as the top priority, meaning something is urgent and more important or just important. So urgent and important could mean, for example, there is a bid to submit and the deadline is in the next 2 days. So the bid for your work is not only urgent, but it's also important. Then the second segment is the second priority is not urgent, but more important. And actually, when I recall what Stephen Covey was teaching, he said, you need to spend a lot of time on the not urgent, but important. For example, things like family, exercise, those are not urgent, but guess what? They're extremely important. So this morning when I was going for a walk with my daughters, they said, oh, Daddy, can you carry us? Okay. So the 7-year-old is about 22 kgs. The 3.5-year-old is about 14 kgs. So the heavier one I put her on the shoulders, the lighter one I put her on the chest. And then we moved around. So it's exercise and also connecting with my daughters. It was very important, but not urgent, trust me. Me taking a walk or going with my girls, it was not urgent. So according to Covey, and this is a very useful piece, by the way, says, better to spend a lot of time on things which are not urgent, but important. For example, planning is not urgent, but extremely important, because it says when you do not spend enough time on things which are not urgent, but important, then that's how we end up having lots of crisis. So someone comes to your table, I'm sure you've heard, oh, I need to leave tomorrow, please, I need this signed now. But you knew this was in your calendar, this was in your project's calendar 6 months ago. You knew about this, but you did not spend enough time planning. You thought it was not urgent to plan then, but it was very important. So when it comes to time management, things like planning, taking care of your health, learning, like what you're doing right now, you're learning. It's not urgent, but extremely important. And then the third piece is urgent, but less important. And it could be things that, a phone call comes through from someone that is always very disturbing. This is someone who always gives you gossip. The phone call is urgent, but it's less important. Last priority, not urgent and less important. I would imagine the gossip could actually lie under that. So your job is look at your week's activities. How would they fit into this model of the urgent and important framework? And then you budget your time accordingly, all right? So please confirm to me if the task is clear, and not only clear, but if you can live your life thinking through and practicing things based on that model, it will be very useful for you. Okay, just a second. Okay, someone is asking me to comment that someone is asking me to comment about that activity does not necessarily mean productivity. Yeah, so what we mean by that is just like what I said earlier, or not all activities are made equal. For example, you could come to work. Let's assume, let's use sales as an example. So in sales, the number one thing that you're measured against is closed deals. Have you closed deals? Have you brought in money? Therefore, but now as a salesperson, you can come read newspapers. You're saying, okay, I need to know the trends, what's happening. You know, you spend 2 hours reading the papers. Then you spend another 30 minutes, you know, having tea. And then before you know it, it is 12 o'clock. But you're, you know, banging cables. You say, let me check the email. You're checking social media. And then before you know it, you're like, it's lunchtime. You're like, oh, let me go for lunch. I'll go out in the field at lunchtime. So you go have lunch. And then before you know it, it's 2 o'clock. Then of course you're a little drowsy. Then you make a few phone calls for, let's say, 30 minutes. Then before you know it, then you're like, okay, let me check what's the latest happenings on social media. Then you call your friends, and before you know it, it's 4 o'clock, then 5. Were those activities? Yes. Were they productive? No. So meaning someone can spend 10 hours, 8 hours of activity, but actual productivity, in this case for the sales professional, it was the 30 minutes of calling prospects or clients. Please type in the chat box if you know someone like that, or you've encountered someone like that. Very busy, but in the end you ask, what did you achieve? And they can only report so little. Have you ever come across a person like that? As Godfrey says, you can, then the person leaves at 10 p.m. and you see no results. Yeah, and there are also people, I'm also sure there are people who will work within the timelines they are given and they produce so much. There are people whereby in 2 hours, they produce more than some other people what they do in 8 hours, because again of not being focused on what's most crucial. Cool. All right, so what you're seeing on the screen is what I would want you to discuss in your breakout rooms. And if you're watching the recording, of course, just pause the video and write down, what did you find most useful in this presentation? And how are you going to implement the lessons moving forward in your life, career, and business? Okay. Yeah, Vivian asked a question. How would you deal with the situation when you set your goals, prioritize your work tasks, but always get distracted by your manager assigning you totally different tasks? Okay. 2 strategies. One is, as much as possible, then I hope you attended the yesterday's session on giving and receiving feedback, which would mean, say, you know what, you could start by asking, by the way, I notice you usually let me know about tasks on the last minute. First of all, again, you start by telling them the positive things you like about their manager. Then you say, and there's one thing that I've been wanting to talk to you about, and just to understand the situation. I noticed that a few times when you alert me ahead of time, I'm much more focused and productive. And I noticed that most times you let me know of things that same day. For example, yesterday and the other day, you brought up tasks, just 1 hour before time. May I know what influences that from your side? Then they will tell you. It could be real or not real. Usually they could do better. And then later you could advise and say, you know what, I would really appreciate it if moving forward, you let me know of these tasks ahead of time, because I really like planning my time ahead of time, and that makes me super productive. And I'm sure you would want me to be very productive. So because there are people who behave that way and they don't know the impact. So unless you communicate the impact, they won't know. So I would give that person feedback. That's one. Two, in case it doesn't work out for you, I would make it a point to figure out a way to come to office an hour earlier, such that you know that that 1 hour you are doing your own stuff, not your own stuff, but you're focused on doing and delivering the most productive things possible. Then that way, by the time your boss comes in with their own things, then at least you know that you've put in at least that 1 hour of productive stuff. So Vivian, let me know if that makes sense or if that's helpful, because it's a very, very useful question. Okay, let me see. There are these other comments. Okay, the Hamza, okay, Godfrey, sorry about the fact that your team could not communicate. Hamza is saying, throw more light on the 80-20 rule. So okay, Vivian says that very helpful. All right, so, yeah, oh, sorry, this is Stephen. Stephen asking, please throw more light on the 80-20 rule. So it's the 80-20 rule is that, so let me give you an example. So I've given you many tips said during this presentation, but I guarantee you that all of us here will find different bits and pieces that are most useful to you. So for you, it could be the 80-20 rule. So assuming there are 10 ideas, you'll find that 2 of those 10 would have 80% of the impact in terms of your time management improvement. So meaning focus on those 2. Now let's go back to business, which is very easy for me to appreciate and understand. So let's just assume you have 10 customers and revenue from those 10 customers is worth, let's say, $100,000. Now, someone who is not familiar with this rule will say, okay, each customer is worth to us $10,000. That's not true, though. If you think in terms of average, yes. Having said that, you'll discover that most likely 1 or 2 of those 10 clients are responsible for $80,000. So what does that mean from a business standpoint? You ask yourself, okay, who are these 2 people who are giving us a big chunk of income? You study their profile, then you might discover that they fit a certain profile. There are certain individuals with a certain income, or there are certain organizations with a certain profile, with a certain budget. Therefore, it means next time when you're going to sell, when you're looking for business, if you can target those characters who give you an average of $40,000, if we say 80,000, let's just for simplicity's case, we say that of the 10 people, there are those who 2 gave you 80,000, meaning one of them gave you 40,000, the other one 40,000, and the other 8 gave you the other 20,000 remaining. So you say, okay, if you can then, so think about this. If you can focus on people who fit the profile, who can give you that $40,000, then it means you just need 3 extra clients to double your income. And the energy you spend to look for those 3 clients who would give you $120,000 is much less compared to aiming to getting 20 clients. Because now the way people would think would say, okay, if 10 clients are giving us $100,000, it means if we want $200,000, then we need 20 clients. That's one way of thinking, which is average. Now, the 80-20 rule says, okay, no, first look for who are those, what is the profile of those clients who are giving us an average of $40,000. Then once you figure that one out, then you focus your energies on looking for 3 clients, whereby each one of them gives you 40,000, 40,000, 40,000. That's an extra 120,000. That's more than double the income. So meaning you're just adding in 3 clients which would mean less headaches because now you're dealing with an extra 3 clients rather than an extra 10. Number 2, you're using less energy. Number 3, you're using less resources to reach out to those clients. So then you're able to double your business. Please let me know, Stephen, if what the scenario and example I've used makes sense. Yes or no? And also the other way, Senoga, also, if you're looking through your personal life, of the many friends you have, there's 1 or 2 that really add a huge quality of happiness to your life, as an example. So focus spending more time with those friends who are adding happiness to your life. Okay.